My issue with the Ellen NFT, like specifically because it's a stick figure of a cat, is she's taking a shit on us. Like, she's making fun of internet culture. She's making fun of, like, myself and many of the other artists who've been doing this for a few years. This is like our life's work. And it's not that there isn't, look, I have a great sense of humor. I love memes like anyone. Like, this is a very internet native pursuit. It's not about being self-serious, but it is about saying, you're making fun of what we're doing here. And you're an incredibly wealthy, well-known person. You're punching down. That's a terrible look. You're making fun of people we're artists who are lifting ourselves up by our own bootstraps and making something for ourselves out of nothing, which is what Ellen did herself. And it's just that, like, come on, man, like, why are you punching at people below you? Especially, I mean, she has not had a great year PR-wise, so it's like kind of just not smart.
Matt, what's happening, man? How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sam. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm excited. We have a very, very special guest today. Who we got lined up?
We've got Sarah Zucker, also known as the Sarah Show. She is an OG crypto artist who got into the space in 2019. Super distinctive style, analog video effects, real throwback film, composites, internet era imagery. She made her name on Tumblr and Giphy before making the transition to NFTs. She wears a lot of different hats, and we're really excited to have her on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think really want to highlight and do so in this episode that she's been in the game she's been creating digital art and content for a long time. And with regards to crypto art and NFTs since 2019. So really is a bit of, to use her words, a wizened elder, or so they call her. And with that, she has a very, very strong read on the community and very unique perspectives on how to properly engage. I think we've seen a lot of new entrants into the market as a result of the recent hype. We've seen lots of celebrities entering the space. And I think she does a great job calling it like it is, protecting the beautiful community that really is creating the snowball effect for growth and upholding the values that are going to continue to drive that growth and protecting them against what some might consider to be low effort NFTs by other celebrities. And I think on the flip side, she also does a great job at explaining how these new entrants can really tastefully engage with the community and can contribute and can continue to leverage their influence to uplift this beautiful movement that's happening. So really excited about this episode. Appreciate you all for tuning in. If you haven't already, definitely go to nftnow.co and sign up for our newsletter every single week. We're sending out an email that has some favorite drops, commentary, insights, analysis. So want to make sure you're not missing out there. But without any further ado, Sarah Zucker.
We've got Sarah Zucker here. Fun story. Sarah and I actually graduated Northwestern the same year. So it's been a little bit since we spoke, and you were early to crypto art back in 2019. I'd love to hear about your journey to the space, what drew you there, and what made you believe in the technology's potential.
Sure. Well, I won't purport to be like an early crypto adopter necessarily. Like, I missed the Bitcoin train for sure. But I did get into Doge in 2013, which I think definitely set the stage. It's funny that it reminds me a lot of like how people are getting really into Hic et Nunc right now. That's on Tezos. Like, I definitely can relate to that because I know for me it was like Bitcoin was like a little too scary. Like, the stakes were a little too high. Like, I'm a very technical person, but something about when Doge emerged, I was like, okay, these are worth like a fraction of a cent. Like, I'm really fascinated by this. Let's play around with it. And I think that's what I see sort of happening with like these Tezos-based blockchain, crypto art platforms right now. But yeah, so I was like interested in the technology way back when. I have been a photographer since I was a teenager. That was really like my main artistic jam for a good decade there. Was super into photography, self-taught, but that transitioned into video around like 2011, and specifically like GIF art. I was very active on Tumblr, did a lot of work for Tumblr. At the time, people thought it was like nutty. They're like, what do you mean, animated GIFs like from the 90s? What? You're specializing in that? But I kind of just had this feel of like everything about my background in photography and what I was doing with video, I was like, no, you guys, trust me, like GIFs are having a comeback, and they sure did. So that's really sort of like my practice that led me to around 2015, I got specifically into analog video. And that's, what I think people who are familiar with my work really associate me with, is the use of like VHS and vintage technologies. And that's its own, anyone who's into like synthesizers and stuff like that can relate, right? Of like, once you start getting into gear, it's like a never ending pursuit of playing with these toys. So yeah, that all just kind of coalesced in a way where I used to curate a show in Los Angeles. And I would really advocate any artist looking to kind of make their way in the world, like be a curator. It's a great way to meet people and get your own work out there. This show was called Prism Pipe. So I met like truly so many, like the world's best GIF artists and video artists and motion artists, so many of whom are in crypto art now. And by being connected to that web, that is how I came to know about crypto art, really. There were like whisperings of it in around like 2015, really right when Ethereum rolled out. A lot of the media art circles started talking about, this blockchain is different from Bitcoin. It has this thing, these smart contracts that could have these applications beyond just being a currency. And there was a lot of talk about it. And because I'd had this background in photography, I was very accustomed to the idea of editions and the idea of like what a print is and how it relates to the original of a photograph or an image and how that market works. And so when I heard about this Ethereum thing, I was like, wow, this seems like this could be a way to translate the fine art market to the blockchain, and in a way that would then make screen-based art, video art, GIF art, 3D art, all these things, we could now create editions of them the same way a photographer could create an edition. And so all those various factors coalesced in early 2019 that an artist who I had curated, who I had included in my show Prism Pipe, Yura Marone, started posting. I followed him on social media, and he started posting, hey, come look, I'm selling this GIF as a single edition on Super Rare. And I was like, what is this it? Is this the thing that I heard people like whispering about 4 or 5 years ago? And I checked out Super Rare, and I was like, oh shit, it's here. Like someone figured it out how to do this. And so applied for Super Rare, got in and started minting. I just celebrated my 2-year crypto art anniversary on April 4th. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And
That's
I've been
awesome.
Tumbling down the rabbit hole ever since, right? It's weird that it's something I've only been doing for 2 years, like in the grand scheme of my life, that is not that long. And yet people speak of me as like one of the wizened elders of this space, and I'll take it, right? Like I like being an expert, and I think part of being an expert is knowing when to admit you have no fucking clue. I am always very open about when it's like, your guess is as good as mine, guys. I don't know. This space changes every day, every hour even. So, but yeah, it's been very rewarding to me to have not just, obviously this has been an incredible pursuit for my career, but just for me as a person. I find it's a very enriching network of people, and it's very personally enriching for me to be in this position of like, I've been through it, guys. Like I've seen some things, like, let me tell you my tales of how this has all gone. And to have people actually be very vested in listening to that. Mm-hmm. It's been cool. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, no, that is amazing. And I do think in like NFT years, yeah, definitely are the wizened elder for sure. So it's amazing to see being the wizened elder. When you think about the boom that we've really seen over the course of the past couple of months and a lot of the mainstream attention, what's it been like to experience it? Do you feel like this was kind of a long time coming and still just a taste of what's to come, or kind of what's been your general take on the fact that there's been this massive hype cycle?
Maybe this is just because I've done my fair share of psychedelics in my time, but I really view the whole thing as like a fractal, right? Like this is a very fractal experience with each little node is a microcosm of the greater thing, right? So in certain ways, it's like the early time has passed us. We've passed that. We've passed the OG era, so to speak, in a way. And yet we also are, every single person involved right now is also super, super, super duper early to what this is as a technology and how it relates to humanity on a greater scale. So the thing about it, is that in terms of like when this all happened, I've said this in other moments I've had to kind of get on my soapbox, that like I think the rise of crypto art and as we now come to call it just NFTs in general is inextricably linked to COVID. It's inextricably linked to the fact that everyone was forced inside. Everyone in the world lost their shit and was like, oh my God, how do we do this? How do we be inside for a year? And us internet people were like, hey man, I'll show you. Like, I know how to be inside and on. I live half my life in the metaverse, right? Like I for a long time have been very accustomed to like, not that I don't love going outside, getting a sandwich, seeing friends, all these things, but I also have been plugged in for a while. And so I think that this sudden emergence of interest in NFTs and value of NFTs is linked to the fact that so many people who otherwise wouldn't have checked this out kind of got pushed there by the pandemic, by the fact that everyone went online, that there weren't any more gallery openings, there was no Art Basel. To that end, it's funny because when I've been thinking about this myself of like, did we know this was coming or did we expect it to come at this time? And, in the early days of Super Rare, the way most of us communicated was really through Super Rare had a Telegram channel. And so I was thinking about this the other day, remembering this conversation I was having with Coldy and Rob Ness back in 2019, because I was like, that was when my early days, right? And these guys had been doing it longer than I had been. So I was asking a lot of questions, and just being like, what do you think? How does this make sense? Like, how does this all work? Doing my best to grok what I was sort of like orienting myself inside of. And I remember them like giving me this pep talk and being like, oh man, Sarah, your art is so awesome. Just wait, this year at Art Basel, there is going to be an NFT panel and you're going to be on it. And Art Basel is when it's all going to happen. And they meant Art Basel 2019, right? Like Art Basel Miami Beach happens in December. So this was like in the spring of 2019, they were like, oh man, that's when we're all going to make it. We're going to get invited to Art Basel and it's going to explode from there. And all this stuff we're doing, that right now we're all selling our work for $50, $100 a pop. Once that happens, once the IRL art collectors get wind of what we're doing here, it's going to explode. And I've been thinking about that so much lately because basically that happened. Like basically what they were predicting happened. It just happened on a different timeline, right? Like, which is the thing of like, I've been a creative, professional creative my entire adult life. And when I get asked for like advice on that, I just tell people, I'm like, you don't control the timeline, right? Like all you can control is your vision and your drive. But like, there's so much outside of who could have seen COVID coming, and it's been weirdly, not that it hasn't been horrible and devastating from like a humanitarian aspect, but again, for those of us in this space, it was this catalyst that exploded crypto art and exploded NFTs and burst this esoteric thing we've all been doing into the exoteric understanding of the world. SNL did a sketch about NFTs. Like, what? That's crazy, So, and the thing I say to people, because again, at the end of 2019, we started having people join the space who started making like a couple $1,000 from their work. And as someone who at the time was selling my work for the Super Rare at the time, I sold pretty well, that I was making $100, $200 here or there. And I saw these people come in and start making like astronomically more money. And I got a little discouraged that I was like, oh, well, man, this sucks. Like, not that their work isn't good. It is, but it's like, because people paid attention to statistics a lot, if you sell your work really low at the beginning, a lot of us OGs had to kind of fight that like our stats showed our work being worth very little because the entire scale of what we were doing was so different at the beginning. So you're competing with like these numbers you set at the beginning when everyone was setting those kind of numbers. And because I've, worked through that, have established this, really wonderful level of value for my work in time, it's what I would say to anyone, right, who like is getting into this. You see some of these big bombastic sales, just try to view it holistically. Like, these big sales are good for all of us because it brings more people into the space. It gets more press coverage. What is good for NFTs is good for you. You are not in competition with any other artist. That's like old world thinking. You got to kind of let go of there is room for everyone here. And it's kind of the old model of like creatives being the lowest people on the hierarchy of social wellness. Artists have historically been treated very badly and have been forced to fight each other for scraps. It's not like that here. So that's kind of my take on it, right? Of like, we all see it when it's like when a celebrity does a low effort NFT. If you've been in the space for a while, I think that the take to have is like, okay, well, whatever they want to do. Like, I'm not going to be buying it as a collector because I know those things, they set their best value the moment they come out and have all the press coverage, and then they depreciate. And who wants that, So it's like, it's not about you, You have to really, I think, if you want to keep doing this long term, and not everyone does. I think for a lot of people, it's just an experiment to see, hey, can I come in and make some money? But if you really see the value of what this is and what it means for creative people, then remember, it's a journey, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and recognize holistically that what's good for NFTs is good for you.
Totally agree with that. I think you bring up a really interesting kind of timely point. Obviously, a lot of celebrities have been entering the space with varying qualities of NFTs. I know that there's a lot of controversy or kind of backlash around Ellen DeGeneres' low effort NFT that she's selling. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, and also how celebrities can enter the space in a tasteful manner.
Yeah. My take on that is, again, she's doing it for charity, which at least is different than the people who come in to just fill their own coffers. And you're like, man, you have so much more money than any of us. Like, you're really going to come here and like shake our tree for money? Like, come on. So that's what I'll say for that. At least if they're going to do it, it's for charity. My issue with the Ellen NFT, like specifically because it's a stick figure of a cat, is she's taking a shit on us. Like, she's making fun of internet culture. She's making fun of like myself and many of the other artists who've been doing this for a few years. This is like our life's work. And it's not that there isn't, look, I have a great sense of humor. I love memes like anyone. Like, this is a very internet native pursuit. It's not about being self-serious, but it is about saying you're making fun of what we're doing here. And you're an incredibly wealthy, well-known person. You're punching down. That's a terrible look. You're making fun of people we're artists who are lifting ourselves up by our own bootstraps and making something for ourselves out of nothing, which is what Ellen did herself. And it's just that of like, come on, man. Like, why are you punching at people below you? Especially, I mean, she has not had a great year PR wise. So it's like kind of just not smart. That's what I'll say about that. And beyond even that, like to extend it beyond celebrities with this, with this cultural emergence of NFTs in the past few months, it's not just celebrities. I've seen a lot of it from the fine art world as well. And that's how I entered this space, from more of like a contemporary fine art practice myself. And I'm very acquainted with a lot of like media artists and organizations that support media artists. And that was one of the things I couldn't have foreseen with this sudden excitement around NFTs, was how triggered like media arts organizations and like tastemakers would get about this. And it's something the artist Andrew Benson had a really good take about this on Twitter. And we were chatting about it a little bit, that, in fine art, there is a tradition of institutional critique that, fine artists, it's like this very much a 20th century tradition of like, okay, so your show is funded by a wealthy baron of industry who probably made their money on like oil or something like that. what is funnier or greater than then making your entire show be critical of the oil industry, right? That's badass to criticize the money that's funding you. And there was always this kind of understanding, or not always, but like in the past maybe 40, 50 years, this understanding between these wealthy entities funding fine art, that was a way for them to almost like, if not absolve themselves of their sins, it was a way of them to say, see, we funded something critical of us. It was a way of them to culturally elevate themselves. And the reason it worked and the reason it was effective is it was a David and Goliath situation where the artist is the little guy and they're punching up at the big guy. And we'd love to see that. So what has happened is fine art people entering this space thinking, well, crypto people have all this money. They're the big guy. They have all this money. So I'm going to enter this space in a way where I'm going to come in swinging, punching at crypto art, making fun of NFTs, making fun. My first NFT is going to be a critique of NFTs. The difference is you're not punching at a baron of industry. Crypto is by definition a decentralized network of individuals. It is not an institution by its very definition. So instead of it coming across as institutional critique, it comes across as you are an established fine artist with a following, with a career, with this position of power you've made for yourself as an artist of good standing. You're coming in to this space that is a space where many artists are for the first time ever getting their opportunity to be recognized as artists or be supported as artists. And you're punching down at them. You're punching down. Like Andrew put it in this great way where he said, it'd be like coming into a party and going, "What's up, nerds? You're all fucking losers." And then expecting everyone to think you're awesome. It's like, no one at that party likes you if you do that. So I've witnessed in these past couple months a number of respected like people from the fine art space enter the space with that kind of attitude. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make fun of the fact that NFTs are just overblown certificates of authenticity, and these NFT people think they're so cool, coming in attacking in a way where it's like, cool, well, you're attacking people that you would never let into your system of gatekeeping before. So that's fine if you want to gatekeep, that's your problem. But you just came into our space in a very combative, unfriendly, and privileged way. Don't be surprised if people don't receive that well. Like it's just been really, this is like the first time I'm saying any of this publicly, and I don't know. I hope it doesn't. I'm sure plenty of people will be like, "Yeah, Sarah, you tell them." And some people might be a little triggered to hear me say that because I have been quietly watching it for months and haven't spoken about it too much because I have a lot on my plate. I have a lot of art to make. I have a lot of stuff going on. I try to spend as little of my time as possible fighting with people on the internet. So I have a lot of thoughts that I don't put out there too much. But all of this is to say, this actually inspired a collection I just put out called The Cassandra Complex, about the Greek myth of Cassandra, who, long story short, she was given the gift of prophecy, but cursed to never be believed. And this emergence of NFTs, and specifically the way the art world has handled the emergence of NFTs, this myth has just been so with me lately, of this sense of knowing about NFTs for years and being sort of like, and no one wanting to spend time on it and going, that's some weird thing you're into. I don't know. And now all of a sudden it's like Horton Hears a Who is like the same story, right? Of like, no one believes until it's too late. No one believes until now the market's oversaturated, and now it's very hard to make a mark, and just dealing with the way that the powers that be, when there is sort of like this prophecy of a new way, or, someone saying, "Hey, I think things are going to change." The status quo, by definition, has to resist it and go, "Absolutely not. We don't want things to change. We like the way that things are because we're empowered in the way things are. We don't want things to change in a way that disempowers us." I mean, we saw that with the music industry and the rise of streaming and all of these things. So it's all to say, I just think all of it speaks to how transformative this technology is, for as simple as it is culturally transformative in a way that it's bringing up a lot of fear in people. And so I personally am just doing my best to just see that, understand that. I kind of have a game I play where I try to see everyone as like their 5-year-old self. I find it's very it helps you be more understanding of people, more understanding of like, oh, they're angry because they're afraid. They're having a temper tantrum. They need a snack and a nap. And then you don't feel quite as like attacked by it. So I've been like evoking that technique a lot these days.
I love that. I might need to try that, to be honest.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good one. But I think you're giving voice to something that a lot of artists in the space are feeling, certainly ones who are early to it like yourself. And even, like you said, the space moves fast, even people who got in just, right before the boom. And it's sort of like, I think one thing that's really special about the space is how welcoming it is. It seems like people want to give new entrants the benefit of the doubt, but like nobody wants to be disrespected, and right. It's like, and that has been happening.
Oh, definitely. A curator I was working with on the Cassandra Complex, Chiara Bradotti, had a phrase. We were talking about this a month or two ago, and she had a phrase that I think is perfect, that she's like, you learn to recognize that it's violence masquerading as activism. And specifically that, coming up around, I had a lot. It was a wave of anger, really, with the rise of NFTs. And there were a lot of sort of like boogeymen that it was being attached to, of why NFTs were so bad. And, I don't really want to get into all of it. I'm not the best person even to speak to all of it. What I have said when asked about it is just, look, no one is more invested in improving these technologies than those of us who engage with them on a daily basis. And so to have someone who doesn't understand it, has only heard about it. Like my wife and I were taking a walk and we were talking about it, and some man in his 50s overheard me talking about cryptocurrency, interrupted us to tell me, did you know that there was, Cedar Sinai got hacked and the hackers made them pay the ransom in Bitcoin? And he just gave me this sort of knowing look, and I was like, okay, what's your point? And he was like, well, it's Bitcoin and it's criminals use Bitcoin. And I was like, criminals use US dollars. Like, in fact, probably far more criminals use US dollars than Bitcoin. So it's like, that's what I mean. I think that story really encapsulates, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Like the less someone is actually an expert on something, the more confident they are that they know what they're talking about. And that is like so applicable in this wave of anger that got put on artists by people. Like I had people, a lot of people that were like, I tangentially knew, were people who had followed me for a long time on the internet. I mean, really violently coming for attacking me. And for a long time, my wanting to think of myself as such a reasoned person, and I'm not afraid of these trolls, and I'll change people's minds. And I think what ended up happening for me, at least, and it's what I'd recommend for a lot of artists if they're still dealing with this, is you have to really, when there's that much coming at you at once, you have to learn how to quickly recognize when someone's coming at you with a bad faith argument, and when they're coming at you and they wish you harm, be it psychic or physical harm, emotional harm. And if someone is coming at you, attacking you, when they don't know the first thing about you or the first thing about what it is they're attacking you for, because they heard through a friend of a friend of a friend that you're burning down the rainforest, you don't owe them anything. And so I got very handy with the block button because it's not about not being accountable by any means. As I said, those of us who engage with this, we are accountable. This is literally our life's work. I know no one who does this in a way where they're not thinking about the ramification and the implications. That's what we're all in it for, right? We see the virtue and value of what we're doing as a future technology. Every future technology is a little awkward and bumpy at the beginning because we're trying to build something of the future with the tools we have available today. It's just that it definitely, I that was something that surprised me. It was something I did not see coming. But when it started happening, it was that feeling of, I guess I should have seen this coming. I guess this is because I'm not an optimist, but I definitely lean into approaching the future with joy and excitement, because I think we have more than enough dystopian vision out there. Like, and my feeling on it is like, whatever you envision, that's what's going to happen. So if we only put out dystopian entertainment and dystopian thoughts about the future and, our fear about what this technology is going to do to us, that's what will happen. We need people holding the vision of, if not a utopian vision, because that's not sensible, just a vision of like, the internet's the greatest tool we've ever had as humans, as essentially just primates who, hopped out of a tree and figured out how to use a rock to smash something. Like we went from there to now having this internet, which is this extension of our nervous system that is allowing each of us now to be a node that connects to one another. Like, we are becoming a mass organism, and it's terrifying to people because we love the idea of separateness. We love the idea of I'm me and you're you, and I have this and you have that, and what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, and all of it's separate. And it's like really frightening to people, this thing we're doing of building this global telecommunication system that's just like mushrooms in the forest connecting through their mycelium. Like, we are now so connected in a way, and have created this technology so relatively rapidly that's, I think, all the arguments in human civilization right now come down to, which side of that line do you fall on? Are you ready to connect? Are you ready to move forward and ready to be this global civilization? Or would you rather die? And would you rather say, nope, I like my tribe and I hate your tribe and I will die for that? And it all boils down to that, right? So this is just yet another way that sort of intense growing pain is bubbling up for people and causing a lot of fear and a lot of anger.
Yeah, no, I really love how you went about breaking that down. I mean, I do think it is interesting because there is some element of polarization, but I think it's the people that are making worthwhile, authentic, great contributions towards bringing this to reality, bringing this into a more mainstream capacity that is more kind of endorsed by the mass market in a tasteful and thoughtful way. So I'm curious from your perspective too, like, you spoke to growing pains. I think that's a very eloquent way of framing it, because it is growing. It'll continue to grow. Inevitably, there will continue to be growing pains in this journey. But in that same regard, like, what do you think are some of the things that will continue to happen or that need to happen that will continue to drive massive growth and kind of mainstream adoption of NFTs?
That's an interesting thing to think about. It brings to mind a tweet my friend, fellow crypto artist Matt Kane tweeted maybe a month or two ago about how at the beginning of crypto art, we were Pangea, right? That it was like everyone in crypto art kind of knew everyone else. We all could kind of see the borders of this little land we were occupying in the metaverse. And even if we didn't know everyone intimately, there was just like, you could say a name and I'd be like, yeah, I know, I'm aware of that person and the work they're doing. He said this right around the time that like all the big celebrity drops started happening and the Beeple sale happened. And he was saying, we now have continental drift, that like, it's not all one continent anymore, that we have now broken off into all these little continents. And now you really can't know the border or boundary of this thing anymore, because it's like the universe, it's exploding, it's rapidly expanding so much that it's like, there's no way I can now keep track of everyone who's involved in this. Again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? It might surprise people to know, based on, that my work is so heavily referential to nostalgia and old technology, that I am actually not exactly a nostalgic person. Like it's to say that while I embrace things of the past, I embrace them in a way that for me is about looking to the future. And I think that, of course, it's easy to look at that and go, oh man, yeah, it was all so simple back then. And that was nice. But this is nice too. Like, this is nice in a different way. It's really cool that there's such mass adoption, rapid adoption. I think that it's less about what needs to happen and what will inevitably happen, right? That Ethereum is scaling up. Ethereum is going to add layer 2, and gas fees are going to change. That is going to be like a tidal wave of change, because right now, so much of what we're doing is contained by the fact that it's a little expensive, especially for artists who are new to the space. It's a little expensive to mint work and to engage with this. That's what I was saying about this is still a relatively new technology and it's bumpy. We're in the 1994 internet era of this crypto art thing we're doing. So, I know that there are changes planned for this summer in July that are going to change the Ethereum network. And then, even these bigger network changes. And as I said, just thinking about all of this holistically, it's why I also would encourage any artist doing this, that it's you are part of such a vast, unknowable ecosystem. We're all in one big pond together. And even if you're way far away, if someone drops a giant boulder on the other side of the pond, those ripples are going to hit you. Right now, even I've seen a lot of artists talking about that their sales have died down, that we're having this inevitable dip because of those big bombastic celebrity sales back in March. It first created, again, it was a boon for everyone. Everyone was making lots of sales. And then just like the Ethereum chart itself, sales for crypto art go up and down. Collectors get more conservative with what they're spending money on. And so I just remind people that if you really want to do this long term, don't get your panties in a knot over that right now sales are a little slow. I am aware there's a certain privilege in being able to say that. Obviously, if this is how you are paying your rent, that is stressful, right? And that would also be something I would say to people is at the beginning, you need to crawl before you walk. Just because you see people making big figures doesn't mean you should expect that at the beginning. Some artists are able to do that with the second they drop their first NFT, if they're coming in because they have 1 million Instagram followers and they have, they're translating their success in other spaces to this space. But for the average artist, regardless of the quality of your artwork may be of great quality, just have measured expectations, right? I, for over a year, had to crawl before I could walk. I was selling my work for very low amounts. And even for a long time, the auctions became so popular on Super Rare. My work is very different from everyone else's. And especially back then, there are more artists working with analog now that I see in the space. But really, I think my work stands on its own. And so people could understand, oh, this is 3D art, or, oh, that's 2D animation. And then they get to Sarah's work and they're like, I don't know, this is alien, something crazy cuckoo. And it either was in a good way or in I don't know what it is. I don't know. I'm going to stay away from it. And so for a while, I just sold my work all last summer. Every new piece, my rule was, I'm just going to put a list price of 1 ETH on it because I think that's a very fair price. And based on my sales, and it eliminates all this pomp and circumstance that while it can be wonderful if it works for you, is actually a deterrent to collectors if you're sort of not there yet as an artist. I'd spoken with a number of my collectors who said, yeah, I wanted to get your piece, but I didn't want to get into an auction. I didn't want to get into a bid war. I didn't want to do all that. I just wanted to buy it. And so I offer that up because I see a lot of people who enter the space now matching themselves to standards being set by artists who are just at a different place in their practice and at a different place in their visibility. And I think that everyone should feel okay to be where they are and to go, you're not wrong if you set a list price. If you think this would be a fair price, I'd be okay with this, and you put that list price on, and then you make that sale, that is going to feel a lot better than putting an auction on it and never making the sale. You also only build a sales record by making sales. So you have to balance that, of course, with the wisdom that don't sell your work for less than what it's worth. Value yourself, price accordingly. But part of valuing yourself is recognizing you are the only you, and you are not the same as these other artists making these other big sales. So seeing what other people are doing is a great way to educate yourself. But at the end of the day, in this space, you have to forge your own path. And if that is too frightening or too anxious making a proposition for you, then maybe this is not a space that is ideal for your temperament. it would be my advice. I certainly don't ever want to tell anyone like, hey, no, you're not cut out for this. But I do think that there's such a language of positivity around crypto. I always think about it, it's like in Peter Pan, right? That if you don't clap hard enough, Tinkerbell will die. That is how cryptocurrency works. We're all saying to each other, clap harder. I need the ETH price to go up. Like, and the same is true then with crypto art, right? And I think for people entering the space, if they're not acquainted to that, if they don't realize that Twitter is a form of public relations, they're taking what are essentially illusions and taking them for truth and going, what people are saying is true about their art or about their sales is not necessarily the entirety of the truth. It's not that they're being dishonest. You're just not seeing the whole picture. So you just have to keep that in mind. I know I deviated from your question a little bit, but I felt this coming through me, and I felt like, I'm always being asked for advice from people, and I just think that's one I just don't see being put out there enough, that it's like everyone hammers home, oh, do an auction, do it Coldy style, do it this way, do it that way, ask for more money, don't sell unless you get more money. And it's like, yes, but also a sale is better than not a sale. So like, I try to bring a little more of that side of just like, we're human beings here, right? Like artists are very sensitive human beings too. They're taking us all in. And I see people get themselves very like worked up based on this hall of mirrors we're all participating in. And I'd like to see people try to synthesize it all a little better.
I think that's really sound advice. And I think you bring like a really insightful perspective too, having been in it, before the boom and seeing sort of, seeing how the market has evolved. And any aspiring artists, people trying to look into the space, I think, that's just some really like valuable pointers you just gave. I think to kind of close things out, one thing I'd love to really hear too is, I think it's fascinating that like, you started with GIF art thinking about Tumblr as like the canvas or not the canvas, almost like the gallery where you would display it. And like, I remember seeing and, doing like analog video, all these kind of throwback film, like, like retro imagery, which I think is super cool. And I remember, I think I saw a tweet recently where you were talking about how cool it was to see some of your art being displayed in the metaverse. And I was curious to hear, like, as an artist and a creator, does that new gallery or does that new sort of like format, how does that change how you're making your art now that like is that inspiring you to sort of like push things in different directions now that it can like live in its own kind of like immersive world?
The answer is yes and no. I mean, everything about this is a feedback loop, right? Like, I think any artist, like, we're a prism, like we're the prism through which the universe shines, that as an artist, your role is to always be intuitive to what's going on and the life you're living, and like your work should morph and change and grow because of your lived experience. That being said, I don't want to say to my credit, but almost just it's a lot of all of this. It's not that it's luck. It's just that this whole pursuit has been so suited to me and my specific gifts and my specific approach that I have always played with a sense of like virtual physicality with my work, because so much of my work, the screen itself is part of the art. That I film an old TV screen to get the look of some of my pieces, and that VHS is a physical medium. So much of what you're seeing in my art is that I'm manipulating a physical medium in a way that then becomes inside this. It goes in and out of the screen, right? So it's all to say that I personally haven't shifted my work a ton with that consideration, only because I feel that my work is already very well suited to that application. What has been very interesting for me, like speaking of Tumblr, right, of like, as someone who had a certain degree of visibility on Tumblr in its heyday, and this is a discussion a lot of us have been kind of having lately on Twitter, those of us who were very active or visible on Tumblr, that the thing about that was always like, okay, cool, my GIF got 20,000 views or 20,000 retweets or whatever, reblogs, and or I made it on the Tumblr radar, hooray, like everyone sees my work. And I remember the high of that, of being like, oh my God, I'm on the Tumblr radar, so many people can see my work. And that fit into this old model that it's the artist Ryder Rips actually made a chart of this that I reference it all the time, that the old model used to be, and by old model, I mean like the social media era model, which we're like past already, which is kind of trippy. It was make good work, wait for emails. That was how, as an artist, like I was a professional artist, right? I was in that rarefied position of supporting myself primarily from my creative practice at a time before crypto art. And so that's what that looked like, was getting on the Tumblr radar was this exciting thing because it meant all of a sudden, all these new eyes are seeing my work, seeing what I do. And it's going to lead to emails. It's going to lead to people emailing me and commissioning me to make art for their album, or commissioning me to do a GIF series for their bottled water or whatever, like, not that that's like, that's why I laugh, because it's like some of the commercial work I did was stuff that it's like, it was exciting because it was exciting to get paid for my art, but it was like pretty demeaning on a certain level, like have to be a shill for a corporation that you don't really believe in. But at that time, the thinking was like, man, nobody else, I know no one else who's made it this far. I know a lot of people who'd give their eye teeth to be in the position to get paid to make a GIF to shill bottled water, So that's what that used to look like. And what is so fascinating about this era, specifically that that we're all on Twitter now. Like I was on Twitter in like 2009. I deleted my Twitter account in like 2011. Like Twitter is old. But we've kind of like found this renaissance of Twitter because of how it plugs into crypto art. I think Twitter and crypto art are linked very much. Like it's part of how we weave this web and how we make sure, because the platforms don't have messaging systems or their own sort of social media system built in. And to answer your previous question, Sam, that's one of the things I think we've yet to see is, when are we going to see the fusion of NFTs and social media? Because whoever cracks that code, that is going to be a whole new thing. Because there are a lot of us who have social media techniques that like would really benefit us if we had them sort of social media built into the platforms. So now we're using this kind of ad hoc system of we tweet about it and then it leads to sales or it leads to bids on the platforms. And, we're creating our own little ecosystem using a variety of different websites and different platforms. And like, for example, so my collection, the Cassandra Complex, sold very quickly. I was it exceeded my expectations. I was very happy about that. It was on Blank Art, which is a newer platform. I intend to keep releasing on the other platforms as well. I'm platform agnostic. Ultimately, what excites me about Blank Art is I was able to create my own custom smart contract for this collection. So this contract will only ever have these 49 tokens on it, and they are self-contained in a way. So I think that is something Blank Art offers that's very exciting to me. And, one of the pieces from this collection is called The Queen Says No, right? And based on what we were all talking about earlier about like this backlash against NFTs, in this story, it's the idea of like the person in power is like, absolutely not. We can't have this. It's going to change things. So it's this sort of like drag queen inspired figure with her like long nails being like, no way. And for me, one of my biggest avenues of visibility has always been Giphy. I've been working with Giphy, putting my work on Giphy since it was created in 2012. It very much, I've always had this symbiotic relationship with it. It has been, again, very beneficial to me in terms of visibility, in terms of that old model of make good work, wait for emails. But my GIFs I have 6.5 billion views of my GIFs on Giphy, and I have no way of monetizing that directly. So I tweeted about this the other day because it really, for me, encapsulates what my crypto art journey and, embracing NFTs as an organic evolution of my art practice. What it has done for me is the sticker I made of this queen figure was trending during the Oscars, which means everyone on TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat, when they go to use a GIF, they see it. It's one of the like recommended GIFs. So it led to me getting 25 million views of this GIF that night. And I love that. Part of me is always going to want, I didn't become a digital artist to become rich. I became a digital artist because it's a calling. It's what I'm called to do. It's just called to express myself in this way. This new part of it where I can actually support myself from it is like awesome, but it was never the intention a decade ago. I wasn't like, you know what, if I make GIFs, I bet that's going to be how I'm going to become a billionaire. And I would wager that most people doing this, and I urge people to keep this in mind, that we are artists first, that we're sensitive, creative people who just want to put beauty in the world. At least speaking for myself, that's why I make these GIFs. They're these things that are very funny, that people enjoy. They brighten people's day, and they can use them in their own social media to like punctuate what they're trying to say. And I like love that. That gives me great joy. But for many years, you know, I couldn't put food on my table from that joy. So I was pointing out that it's like 25 million people used this GIF and enjoyed this GIF and delighted in this GIF, but only the 8 collectors who collected the limited edition NFT own this image, own this GIF, and own this thing. You know, it'd be like the difference between having a poster of the Mona Lisa or owning the Mona Lisa, you know, and I sort of pointed out the poetry of the fact that nothing has changed in terms of how I share my art with the world. I'm still letting people enjoy and use and share my art. But now I have this other means of building a collector base and of creating these scarce digital assets that are essentially prints or editions of my art. And the fact that this thing got 25 million views gives it a cultural value that actually amplifies the value of those NFTs. So it's this incredible like continuum between the image itself and its cultural visibility and the NFT. And, you know, people were always laughing about the right click save as guy, right? You know, it's like, you either get it or you don't. You either get that the fact that the image is incredibly widespread means it's a valuable image, or you think digital artists are crap and don't deserve to be celebrated or deserve to have any sort of profit share from these things we create that are making the social media companies very rich. So it's just a really interesting time to be an artist, and specifically a screen-based artist. Totally
agree, Sarah. You know, I think you bring up some really, really like compelling points and things we've been, you know, discussing and thinking about the idea that, you know, NFTs allow creators to sort of capture the value that they've created, but previously couldn't really share. And you know, I think you speak really, really eloquently to that journey from being able to, you know, sort of have this means to an end of like, okay, I'm making art to be able to get client work to support my ability to make art versus be able to make a living off your own creative vision. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the space. Yeah, I mean, this has been an amazing conversation. Really thankful to have you on. So thank you for joining us. Yeah, thank you guys for having me and listening to all my thoughts.
It was amazing. Keep up the great work. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Man, shots fired. Ellen, You're going down. No, I'm kidding. That was very thoughtfully and eloquently said. I think it's, and I'm glad she really called it like it is. I know this has been a conversation that a lot of the kind of diehard community has really been conscious of and trying to protect and speak out about. And I think she just does a very great job at eloquently speaking to how, from a positive note, how to properly engage, how to leverage influence to uplift community, to drive growth in a thoughtful and tasteful way. What stood out to you, Matt?
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. You know, I think that she really spoke from the heart. You could tell that she was truly passionate about this space and really just wants to protect it. And I think that she gave voice to sentiments that I think a lot of artists in the space can empathize with. And you know, one other thing I thought was really interesting was we got a new perspective on the podcast from an OG artist. You know, I thought it was really interesting to hear her thoughts about you know, as the prices rose, the fact that some of the OG artists, because they had been early and trading at lower prices, kind of felt like they were in catch-up mode. I hadn't heard that sentiment expressed before, so I definitely learned something there. And you know, I think that she gave some really, really great perspectives on you know, sort of the future of the space and the community that lies at the heart of it as we got towards the end of the podcast as well.
Yeah, well, special shout out to Sarah, everything she's done with the community and continues to do. Super grateful she came on today, and also super grateful for you all for listening, for tuning in. So appreciate the time, the attention, and we'll be back next week. Until then, we out.